Within 5 seconds of a person entering our store, you smile at them, and almost always they would return the smile.
And I used to call my sisters and brothers to come and play bingo and play cards, and we always stay together. That's the main thing.
I'd say relax and speak to everybody, and you'll get many, many friends.
Welcome to Elder Wisdom Stories from the Green Bench. It's me again, Kathy Buckworth, and of course I'm joined by my co-host Evelyn Brindle as we chat and gather some elder wisdom from some very smart folks. And today we are going to be talking to someone who knows a lot about, life, but also a lot about curling, and we're going to get into that. But first of all, Evelyn, good morning.
Good morning, Kathy. I hope it's a good one.
Have you ever curled, Evelyn?
No, the only time I've ever watched curling is when it's on in the Olympics, and that's been about as much as I've ever seen. Coming from the States, it wasn't a big sport there, so I never really got into it.
Yeah, I grew up in Winnipeg, and that's known, I think, for a lot of curlers. I didn't curl myself, but I was cool enough to hang with the curling crowd. How's that? So I got to know what the game was all about. And I'm really excited today and remind our listeners what this podcast is all about. It's about, Ron Schlegel's belief that the greatest untapped resource in Canada, if not the world, is the collective wisdom of our elders. And today we are welcoming one of the great ones, Murray Woods. Good morning, Murray.
Good morning to you.
And long before you hit the curling ice, I think I'm saying that in the right way, I want to take you right back to the beginning, Murray, and talk about some of your roots leading up to where we are today.
Well, if you're going to go back to the beginning, I was born on a farm in Dufferin County, just west of Orangeville, born in the summer of 1932. And in the farmhouse, I was the youngest of 4 children, and all 4 of us were born in the same bedroom. Home births were pretty common at that time, and actually on a mixed farm, birthing is a pretty common occurrence. That we didn't have any electricity at that time or radio. These luxuries didn't come until I was 7 years old. We did have coal oil lamps for light in the house and coal oil lanterns for light in the barn. And we did have a telephone. We shared a party line with 10 or more farm neighbors. And our ring was 2 longs and 2 shorts. It maybe seems a little strange, but I still remember a number of the numbers of some of our neighbors. But by the time that I was 5, I had the reputation of being a bit of a rascal. And then there's a bit of notoriety was added to it at that time. And the situation arose when I was not permitted to go to town in the car that was going. The car we had at the time was a Model A Ford, and it had a homemade trailer hitch that consisted of a 4x4-inch beam bolted onto the back bumper just below the rear tire attachment. The car was loaded with dead chickens.
Oh, no.
And actually, in fact, they say it was loaded with dressed chickens, and that's a misnomer because they weren't dressed. They were dead chickens with the feathers all removed. And the loaded chickens was ready to be delivered to the market in Grand Valley. That's the town 10 kilometers away.
Okay, I have a good visual now, Murray, of this truckload of dead chickens. So carry on.
And I really wanted to go, and I wasn't permitted because there was no room in the car. But I had a solution. I could ride on the trailer bar at the back of the car. And so I tried it. I got onto the trailer bar and took a hold of the spare tire, and it
Oh
felt
my
pretty
goodness.
good. And it was just then that my father came out of the house to leave, and he simply said, "Murray, get off there." And I got off. He went around and got into the car. I got back on, and we were off. My mother saw the car going down the lane, and she was frantic. She tried to phone to neighbors ahead to stop the car without any success. The road all the way to Grand Valley was gravel and bumpy, and my mother had nothing but images of disaster. But we
And
arrived in Grand Valley successfully. And when the car stopped, local Constable Stuckey, came over to the car and he asked my father if the boy in the back of the car might be his. My father answered, "If there's a boy in the back of the car, he will be mine."
it's got to be Murray. And Murray, just, for listeners, you were 5 years old at the time. Is that right?
Yes,
That's pretty small. And I looked it up. It's 15 kilometers from Bellwood to Grand Valley. That's quite a journey for a little guy. That must
yeah.
have lit up the party lines.
Well, we were 10 kilometers from Grand Valley. We were a few kilometers from
Mm.
east of Bellwood.
Oh, well, then it's nothing special. I'm just kidding. That's still a long way. That's still a long way to go for a 5-year-old.
But I remember standing at the back of the car, and my father said to the policeman, "What would you do with a boy like this?" And the constable said, "Oh, I think I'd buy him an ice cream cone." Well, I
Did you?
didn't get the ice cream cone. However, my mother expressed phenomenal emotional relief when the phone call came that everything was okay. Well, the story, in today's terms, you might say that it went viral, which really just meant it spread outside the community. But it became my identity. My identity was tied with this event for a long time, and people would say, "Oh, so you're the boy that rode to Grand Valley on the spare tire." And
That absolutely would have gone viral. When you think about it, at the time when you just had a party line, and now the way that technology has changed, you just shake your head sometimes.
in any case, that I never tried another ride. The ride was never repeated.
They
So
let you sit in the car from then on?
I traveled in the car.
Yes. Kids will always come up with something interesting when they want to do it, right? Uh, Murray, did you have any chores on the farm when you were growing up?
The I was the youngest, so I was maybe the last one to be assigned. But what my first assignment was to, and we had 4 horses, and that was to let the horses out for a drink and to clean the horse stable. And so that was my job assignment.
Okay.
Before we get into your career journey, which I understand still involves chickens to some regard because you went into egg grading, as a child or even as a young adult, did you ever do any other risky things, or was that enough? Was riding on the back of a car for 10 kilometers as a 5-year-old, did that quell any other desire?
You, your question again? Any other?
Risky things?
Oh,
Just between you and I, Murray. No one's listening. It's fine.
the the no, well, I guess just the one thing that was surprisingly common at that time, before the barns were filled with hay, so they're empty, and you had all the beams, and the Sunday afternoon, kind of neighbor kids or kids, and we would play tag on the beams, and the hay rope hung down in the middle of the drive floor, and it would swing. It was swingable from beam to beam, and so that there could be 3 and 4 people hang on to the rope and swing from one beam across the drive floor to the other to get away when playing tag, so they wouldn't be caught. And I remember once that I was late grabbing onto onto the rope, and I tended to be about the youngest one there. And I dropped to the barn floor, which would be, it'd be 8 feet or so. And the only thing I remember is I had the wind knocked out of me, and the feeling of trying to get that gasp of air. But you know, today I can't imagine kids doing that today. I can't imagine parents letting their kids do that today.
No,
No.
I can't either. I know my grandkids engage in what they call risky play, but literally it's probably going down the slide by themselves, right? So it's quite different today.
Marie, you were the youngest of 4 children, I understand. Were they all boys or
I had
what?
one sister, two older brothers, Johnson, Russell, and then my sister Shirley, and then me.
Okay. Were they all as adventurous as you were?
Oh, possibly, maybe. I I don't think I maybe have more stories to tell, but that's because I remember them.
Uh,
I'm going to take you forward, Marie, to your career journey now. I touched on it briefly in terms of being an egg grader, but also 22 years with Masterfeeds. Let me know, Marie, what does an egg grader do? How does that work? I admit I don't know much about it.
So in egg grading, you have first of all the grades: grade A, grade B. Grade B is when it has a dirt spot on it. In other words, the egg is just still fine, but it's got a dirt spot on the shell. Grade C, it has a crack, and so and then after that is a reject if it has a blood spot or a meat spot inside it. So egg grading machine, the egg grading machine will receive the eggs just from the hen house or from the farm. First, it washes them, then it passes them over a light, and the egg is spun automatically. And the egg grader, which is a person, then can see inside the egg, can see if it's cracked, can see if there's a flaw in the inside, and can remove it. Then the egg goes over a scale, and each individual egg is weighed within a hair of its life, and then it's selected whether it is extra large, large, medium, small, or peewee. And so these machines have become just highly technical, and they and when at the time that I retired, the machine would grade 10,000 dozen an hour,
Wow.
oh,
and we would run the machine 16 hours a day, and then the other shift, the other 8 hours was clean up, because you had to clean up the machinery and everything to A1 standard before you started to grade the next day. But you could take 1,000,000 hens to feed one machine. So
Wow.
there's not a great number of the machines operating in Ontario, and some machines now are larger than 10,000 dozen an hour.
So you did that for about 19 years, I think I have here. And I have to ask you, do you still eat eggs after all of that?
Yes, I had an egg yesterday.
There you go.
Poached egg on toast is a pretty quick lunch.
yeah, it is. And you had quite a long career with Masterfeeds as well. And I'm sure through those 22 years with that company, there were a lot of new developments over those years from the time that you were growing up on your farm and working with that company. Tell us a little bit about what they did and how much everything changed in that area.
Well, one of the things that did change the prepared the commercial feed business, and that was the growth of the poultry industry, and so that poultry feed is it's not an on-farm feed. If you're feeding cattle or cows, then grass, hay, haylage, and so on. But in poultry, it's all prepared feed, and they and so that growth really took place starting in the late 1950s. The first division was the division of instead of having a dual purpose bird that laid eggs and was okay for meat, it divided into you had a very specialized egg laying strain that only laid eggs, and you had meat strains that were for meat. My one interesting little facet, and that is when the Swiss Chalet restaurants first moved to Toronto, and that was in the late 50s, and they they specified a particular chicken, a peel barred rock, and they specified particular processing, which which was a mild scald that left the cuticle on the birds so that they weren't chilled in water, they're chilled in air. And I had the responsibility of coordinating the growing and the marketing of birds to supply the Swiss chalets in Toronto,
Hmm.
and that was they had when I was involved up to they had three restaurants, and they would take 10,000 some weeks 10,000 birds a week. So they're very successful restaurants now. Of course, now it has changed, and there's hundreds of them. However, the source of the chicken has changed, and that's because there has been just the change in the breeding of the selection of the chickens that are used, but they still use the same mild scald that leaves an air chilled chicken rather than being chilled in ice and water.
You speak rather fondly of your work experiences, Murray. Was work rewarding for you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. They find there's any career has its ups and downs. They but basically, I was happy to go to work every day, and I was involved in different different areas, starting out in feed sales, and that's when I got into with the Swiss Chalet, and then was over to the chicken processing, and I was manager of a chicken processing plant for a few years. Then I was back into management in the feed end, and I was the general manager of Central Ontario toward the end of my career there.
Work-life balance is something that people talk about a lot today. Was that a consideration when you were working? I know you have some children.
The well, they I guess I'd like to say that I was fairly balanced.
Hmm.
They I was I also had activities. I was always anxious for to gaining to success, and success kind of meant earnings outside of one's job. So I did have some side enterprises, not not permanent things, but some of them did last a while. But and but we traveled.
Hmm.
I'm thinking in the family. When the family we camped to the East Coast and we camped to the West Coast with the children when when they were growing up, and probably camping was quite an important family activity because we used to, besides the trips, pretty well every long weekend in the summer we would go camping at a park, provincial park or other park. So I guess that's part of balancing. I was I played ball till I was probably 40 years old,
Hmm.
and so that was always a consideration. the was I was a fastball pitcher. Played for Brooklyn. Lived in Brooklyn for a year when I was with Masterfeeds, and we won the Southern Ontario Intermediate C Championship that year.
Wow.
And you were in a no-hitter game with the Camp Borden team. I know.
Yeah, you gather a lot of information. That took place in the same Ontario Playdowns that I refer to that we won the Southern Ontario.
So we've got baseball, and we started off at the top of the show talking about curling. So I'm going to loop back to that because curling is a significant part of your life. Is that right, Murray?
Well, certainly has been the longest, but and I guess as when I say that I've always been active, and so that when I was in high school, then it was high school sports, track and field, and and uh, and I guess really also when got to college at the OAC, I was member of the track team there. Got my OAC Big O in track and field, which meant that I won an intercollegiate event, and this for me it was a running long jump, which I won at intercollegiate, no, inter-university, I guess, inter-university track and field meet, and all from high school on. Of course, I played ball, and then right after college, then curling started. And that was a good thing because as other things faded away, curling stayed.
And how did you get involved with curling in the first place, Murray?
Well, I started. I was, of course, aware of curling, and as soon as I moved to Lindsay, it was one of the first things that I inquired about as far as joining the curling club. I was mentally ready, and so I actually started. And this would be the winter of '97, and then I think over the years, there's only been 1 year that I didn't curl, but whatever town that we lived in, and we moved a number of times, then I always joined the curling club, and did Emily, my wife, and so it was a social connection where when you would be in a new location, that immediately there was a kind of a circle that and the connection with the United Church. Those two things were the kind of the ribbon of reestablishment each time that we did make a move.
And Murray, you're 91. I hope you don't mind me revealing your age, and you still curl twice a week. How are you finding that? Still as fun as ever?
The still as much fun as ever, but as I would say that I consider that I curled at a fairly good level, but I do have a question mark as far as that I'm not improving with age. Let me put it that way.
How many players are your age that you actually curl with?
Well, last fall, when we started curling, I was the oldest active curling in the Guelph Curling Club. After Christmas, or in the second half, then one other curler, Don Blackburn, returned, and he's a few months older than me, and so I say that the two of us share being the oldest curlers in the club this year, and I think we got a few years lead on the third person who's following up.
Murray, maybe you can explain. I was doing a little research as far as curling was concerned, so I would know a little something about it. And I know it has a few nicknames like chess on ice or the roaring game, which is the sound that the stone makes going over the ice. But that I ran across something called the spirit of curling. Can you explain what that is?
I can't explain it. I'd be giving you just an opinion,
Sure,
and the and I s- and I would say that the spirit of curling is competitive camaraderie,
that's
and
good.
and uh, it's one of the two games that in the world, and they both started in Scotland, in which it's golf and curling, and they both are played and can be played without referees or uh, or supervision.
Yes.
So,
We used to joke that curling and golf were the only two sports you could do while drinking and smoking as well, but I guess that's changed now.
well, of course, smoking has not to, not totally gone the way of the dodo bird, but it's going where it's heading in the direction where it should go.
Hmm.
Uh, and and drinking, I think drinking, if anything, is more of greater moderation than in the past. Now, whether that's the rules of the road that have changed, I know it certainly has changed in my life from the time that when we were going to the cottage that we'd have a thermos full of either gin and tonic or rye and ginger to get us to the cottage. We'd never even think of that now.
Yeah, I remember them having ashtrays in on the curling ice when I used to go watch my friends play in Winnipeg so many years ago. I guess
That's
that's
true.
changed too.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you're not allowed to have a cigarette inside the club.
No, exactly. What is it about curling, Murray, that keeps you going back again and again?
Well, maybe I'd go back to the what I said about the spirit of
Hmm.
curling, in which it's competitive camaraderie, in which you play your best competitively to win, but you congratulate the opposition on making good shots.
Hmm.
At least in my experience, that there's there's, there's never any aggressive uh, type of play or action. It is all it's always socially acceptable.
That's why it's called a gentleman's sport. Uh, the winner always buys the drinks, right?
That's right.
I saw too that there's a relationship with some of the things that we'd have here at Schlegel at the homes called Ailsa Craig, and that the stones that are used, the granite, comes from the island of Ailsa Craig off the coast of Scotland. We had a guest previously this season that was questioning what else the Craig came from, and I understand those stones are 42 pounds, so that's quite a lot to have to throw along the ice. So it takes quite a bit of conditioning, doesn't it, for you to do something like that?
Mind you, you slide them along the ice. You don't throw them along
Oh,
the ice.
that's right. Yeah.
And they and so, but but yes, especially the delivery has changed where there's still a few, but they're very few, and they where the rock is swung back in the air and then swung from the out front and then on the ice and down the ice. The now 90 some percent, it's all leg drive in which they push out from the hack with the leg drive to get this speed to release the rock.
And the brooms have changed also, haven't they? Where they used to be, the swishing back and forth. It looked like almost a corn broom or a sweeping broom, and now it's push brooms primarily. I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, it started. If you look old pictures, they it just looked like a house broom,
Hmm.
but and then it went from that to a long narrow broom, and and then and this long narrow broom had a leather strap in the middle, and they called them one name of was blackjack, and they would snap. They'd make a good deal of noise, and at one time that was kind of music to my ears that you could sweep so hard to make the thing snap, snap, snap. But I tell you that when you got a whole lot of them in one curling rink, it was terrible noise. So now I think that if anybody was using them, it'd be complaining because it was disturbing. Now have step by step gone to push brooms, and the sweeping is silent.
So we're sharing wisdom here on the podcast, elder wisdom. Do you ever share some of your wisdom with the younger players in curling?
The
Do you coach them? How's that? Do you say back in the day, or here's what we're doing now?
No, I've not. I've not been an active coach in any of these junior programs.
Murray, you had that outstanding moment when you were playing ball, being in a no-hitter game, but I understand you were also in another rare moment in curling, in a game that was ended as a 7-ender. What is a 7-ender that's so outstanding or so rare?
Well, each a team is 4 players. Each player has two stones, so that's a total of 8 rocks or 8 stones per team. And the counting is the number of stones that you have closer to the center button than any opposition stone. And so that if curling to score a 7-ender, that means that 7 of your 8 stones are closer to the center button than any of the opposing stones. Often that means that means you have 7 stones on the rings and the opposition doesn't have any. And I have been involved in at least quickly in mind at least 2 7-enders, and in the one case we had 7 stones in the house or in the rings, and without last stone. But there was quite a clear path down the center of the ice, and so this was mixed curling, and so in the opposition, the chap's wife said, "Well, you just have to draw it in the center," and he said, "Oh yeah," but in any case, it slid right through,
Wow.
and we scored 7-ender. Now I have never scored an 8-ender. 8-enders are about as rare as a hole-in-one in curling or in golf. But by the same token, I've never had an 8-ender scored against me either.
Yeah. Congratulations on those that you were part of, and it takes an awful lot of stamina and physical accomplishment to be able to even play curling. So you've done a tremendous job over all these years, playing for 66 years and still going strong. So congratulations, Murray.
Thank you. The Guelph Club is quite a good club. It was established in 1838, and it operated in 2 different locations over the first 130 years in downtown Guelph, and then in 130 years later, in 1968, then it moved to the present club, which is at the north end of Guelph, to 10 acres of land. And so just recently, they have retained about 3 acres, and the balance has been sold. And as we speak, the machinery is going, putting in the services for townhouses and other
Yeah,
residential buildings.
unfortunately, yeah, it happens with a lot of places these days. I understand you're a pretty big fan of the Grand Slam of curling event that takes place now and will be coming up soon. There's tournaments starting in April here in Toronto at the Mattamy Center, and will end up in Guelph in January. And I hear you've got tickets for that already.
Yeah. Now I'm not sure as far as what you're saying about April, but next season, which will start next September and then go through the winter months, and in January 14th to I guess 14th to 19th,
Yeah.
then it's at the Sleeman Center here in Guelph, and so the Guelph Curling Club is very much involved. They they're looking or setting up or planning to have 250 volunteers,
Oh,
and
you were one of them at one point, weren't you?
I have been involved in the at least major events that were held at the same center
Mm.
uh, 12, 14 years ago. They involved then, and I plan to be available for this event as well. Although I'm going to be slow to sign up as a volunteer, but come that time, if I'm still kicking on all cylinders, then I will be there volunteering as well.
Well,
The-
I
So
know it's on
the,
TV, so we'll look forward to perhaps seeing you there.
yeah, the curling club itself will close down that week, and so all the emphasis of the curling members and so on will all be directed on the successful hosting of that facility
Oh,
and
And
that
well,
event.
I understand Schlegel Villages is a proud sponsor of the Grand Slam of Curling
Yes.
in Guelph in January, and that's wonderful. And I wanted to loop back a bit to Schlegel Villages, of course, and talk about elder wisdom. And Murray, you had said to us earlier that you had some guidelines that you wanted to share for elder wisdom, and I wanted to get into that now. What are your guidelines, Murray?
So that these are words that were given to me, and that they can be a guide for all ages. And it is count your blessings instead of your crosses. Count your gains instead of your losses. Count your joys instead of your woes. Count your friends instead of your foes. Count your courage instead of your fears. Count your laughs instead of your tears. Count your health instead of your wealth. Count on God instead of yourself.
that is beautiful. Yes,
That was fantastic. I love
oh,
that so
just
much.
wonderful.
Well, you were just a pleasure and a joy to speak with today, Murray. And I learned a lot about everything from egg grading to dead chickens to what to not let your 5-year-old do when you have the car out in the driveway. And I know Evelyn and I really loved speaking with you today. We really appreciate you joining us on the Green Bench.
Definitely. Thank you, Murray. I learned a lot today.
Well, I think we only worked on about 6%.
All through this podcast, of course, been dying to ask you what comes first, the chicken or the egg, because you seem like the ultimate, source on that subject. I'm going to leave that up in the air for our listeners to figure out. And on behalf of myself and Evelyn Brindle, I'd like to thank you again for being on the podcast. Anybody listening to us, we'd love to have you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. But we'd also love to hear your words of wisdom on social media, if you can top the ones that Murray just gave us. Please do so using the hashtag #ElderWisdom, which will also help others to find us on this green bench. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kathy Buckworth, and again, along with Evelyn, we look forward to sharing some more elder wisdom with you on the next episode of Stories from the Green Bench.
Elder Wisdom, Stories from the Green Bench is brought to you by Schlegel Villages, a complete continuum of care, offering independent living to long-term care, celebrating and honoring the wisdom of the elder. To learn more about us, please go to our website, schlegelvillages.com.